So welcome to everyone here and around the world. This evening we're going to speak about Jacob Avinu, the third of the Patriarchs, the one that we're reading about now in the coming weeks, beginning from this week at Parashat Vayetze. We have three patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Each one has his particular spiritual, emotional attribute. Abraham is a love, chesed, loving kindness. Yitzchak is fear, yira, fear of Hashem. We're taught in Chassidut that fear implies sensitivity to the will of Hashem, sensitivity to other individuals, other souls. If a person is sensitive, he's considerate. He doesn't hurt other people's feelings. That's the attribute, the special attribute of Yitzchak, the second of the patriarchs. And the third of the patriarchs that once more now we're beginning to study in the Torah these coming weeks, actually most all of this month, is Jacob. He is called the choice of the patriarchs, the choice of the fathers. It means that there's something very unique and special about him. And that's what we're going to try to understand this evening, what's unique that makes Jacob, more than the previous two fathers, the choice of the fathers. His attribute is compassion. In the Tanya, the first Rebbe of Chabad also identifies his attribute with faith. He says that there are three basic attributes of the heart, love and fear, the two that we said before, that correspond to Abraham and to Isaac, to Yitzchak. And for the third, instead of saying, as usually is explained, compassion or mercy, rachamim, he says that the third is emunah. Emunah is faith. So this we also have to understand what's so special about the faith that Jacob has, because the beginning of faith, the first soul to believe, to have faith in God, is Abraham. He's called the head of all believers. So why is faith attributed especially to Jacob, even more than to Abraham? That's one of the things that we're going to have to understand, try to understand this evening. We'll begin with what the Arizal, the greatest of the Kabbalists, says about Jacob, Jacob Avinu. He says that indeed Jacob is the inner soul of all of the worlds of creation. A very strong and profound statement that all of the worlds possess a soul, an inner soul, and that soul of all of creation is Jacob himself. We're taught that the power to create, the divine power to create something from nothing, actually comes from Abraham. The first verse of the second account of creation, the Torah begins, these are the generations of heavens and earth in their state of being created, Bihi Baram, the letters of which spell Ba'Avraham, with Abraham, from which we learned that God created the world with the attribute of Abraham, which is love and loving kindness, chesed. And to create something anew is with love and with the soul root of Abraham. What about Isaac? It says that Isaac is the power to conceal the Creator from the creation itself in order to give creation a sense of individuality and independence and free choice. It's free choice, which is the basis of the whole Torah, obviously, that we have the power to choose between good and evil. That comes from the soul root of Isaac, Because were it to be that God, the Creator, would be revealed to all, that would negate free choice. So in order to allow for free choice, the Creator has to be concealed from the creation. And that power is the power of Isaac. Then after the creation itself and the concealment of the Creator in order to allow for free choice, then comes the third, the choice, which actually we said is faith. And one of the explanations of the special type or meaning of faith in the context of Jacob is the faith that everything that happens in my life is for the good. Gam zu l'tova, no matter what happens, it's all for the good. And there's another expression that Rabbi Akiva says, we're going to explain in the continuation, that the most important, the primary reincarnation of Jacob is Rabbi Akiva. And that's why Akiva, well, know who Rabbi Akiva is. He's the pillar of the oral tradition, the oral Torah. Just like Moses is the pillar of the written Torah. And Akiva, his name Akiva, is actually the same letter. It's a permutation of the letters of Yaakov, of Jacob, with an additional aleph, which is called the Kolel. So there's a very clear allusion that Akiva is Yaakov Avinu returning to reveal the oral tradition that connects with the written tradition that we were given by Moses. Rabbi Akiva said, Kol ma da'avid rachmanu l'tav avid. One of his most important sayings. There's many very, very important central sayings of Rabbi Akiva. Maybe the one that we know best is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, that love your fellow as yourself, is the klal, the great principle of the whole Torah. But another very, very important statement that we have from Rabbi Akiva is Kol ma da'avid rachmanu l'tav avid. Whatever God does is for the good. His own Rebbe, Rabbi Akiva's Rebbe, was Nachum Ish Gamzu, that he said, Gamzu l'tova, everything is for the good. So that very strong faith and conviction that everything that happens, even if it appears at first sight not to be so good, but deep down it's really for the good and it will become revealed. And the more that I am strong in my faith right now that it's for the good, the sooner and the greater it will become revealed that indeed it is the very best thing that God could have done for me and for us. Right, so once more, what did we say until now? We said that the Arizal teaches us that Jacob is the soul of the creation after it's created. Once more, the world is created through the soul root of Abraham. Man is given a free choice, that depends on the concealment of the Creator from the creation, from his creation, through the soul root of Isaac, and the soul of all of us together, and every world. There are many worlds. In general, we're taught that there are 4 worlds. There's one pillar, which is the soul of all of the worlds, and that soul is Jacob. And how does it express itself? Through the faith and the conviction that everything that happens is ultimately for the good. What does this mean practically? This, what we just now said, that Jacob is the soul of the worlds. It means that any soul, not just Jewish souls, this is a topic, a theme that also we've addressed in the last sessions that we've given here. all peoples on earth, if they so desire, they have the ability to enter inwardly to the inner soul of the reality that they exist in, that they live in right now. And if they go all the way in, if they delve inwardly and dig deeply inwardly to themselves and to the reality that they live in, they will find Jacob. He's there inside each one of you. I'm now speaking to the whole world. And if you really go deep enough into your own reality, and you reach Jacob, and you want to identify with that Jacob inside you and inside your world, so that will obviously arouse in yourself a motivation to come close to the Jewish people. That this once more is the choice of the fathers of the Jewish people. And maybe you'll even want to convert to Judaism. So this is the first thing about Jacob. That the Arizal says that Jacob is the soul of all of the worlds. Now what we're going to do, we're going to try to meditate upon 10 or 11 different unique properties about Jacob and see how they correspond to the basic tree of life of Kabbalah, which are called the Sfirot, the divine lights and channels through which God creates the world and continuously creates the world and continually does good things for all of his creations. In a certain way, what we're going to now do is an introductory meditation to Kabbalah and Hasidut in general, because we're going to go through all of the Sfirot and see how each one has some unique connection to Jacob. And while we're going to do this, we're going to also reveal some more things about the reincarnations of Jacob. One important thing to begin with is that Jacob was a twin. He had a twin brother, and his twin brother Esau, just like Jacob is very, very righteous, so his twin brother was just the opposite. And in the soul, these two twins, they very often represent and symbolize the two inclinations that everyone has in his heart, the good, positive inclination to do good to everyone, to be compassionate, merciful to everyone, and the negative inclination, which is the inclination which is just selfish, egocentric, desiring to rule over other people, which is Esau. So these two brothers are in conflict. But ultimately, when Mashiach is going to come very soon, so there has to be peace. There has to be some rectification between these two brothers. Once more, so the choice father is the one that has the wicked twin brother. That in itself is a very amazing statement. That the choiceness, the uniqueness, the greatness is that you have this twin brother who is the very epitome of your antithesis, and you're in continual conflict with him. And that's what makes you the choice of the fathers. So once more, just as these are the two inclinations of creation, so as we said before, if Jacob is the inner soul of all of reality and the inner soul of your particular world that you're living in, so the choice that you have is either to delve deeply into your pnimiyut, your inner dimension, and reach Jacob, or to suffice with the external manifestation of your self-consciousness And there you will meet his twin brother, Esau. And this is your choice. These are the two sons of Yitzhak. Yitzhak is the father. We identified Yitzhak with the power of free choice. And the free choice is actually between his two twin sons, Yaakov and Esau. The highest of the 10 sefirot is called the Keter, the crown. And it corresponds in the soul, as all of the sefirot, all the channels of creation, the lights of creation, correspond to properties in the soul, because man was created in the image of God. The crown is all of the super intellectual or rational properties of the soul, which in general are divided into three, which are faith that we just mentioned before, and pleasure and will. Those are all super-rational states of the psyche, of the soul. The unique thing about Jacob that corresponds to this level of Keter, or crown, is that he is the only one of the patriarchs, and also the only soul in the Tanakh, in the Bible, of whom it says that God called him God. Vayikra lo kel Elokei Yisrael. It says that God, the God of Israel, his name is Israel. Jacob has another name, Israel. We'll mention that in the continuation. That the God of Israel, means his God, called him Kel. Kel is the simplest two-letter name of God. Now, that two-letter name of God, Kel, either corresponds to, in Kabbalah, to the Sphira, to the power of loving kindness, as it says, Chesed Kel, the loving kindness of God, Kol Hayom, is all day long. Or it corresponds also to the mercy of the super-rational crown of the soul, because there are 13 principles of mercy, and the first of which is the all-inclusive principle of mercy, is Kel, this name Kel Aleph Lamed. And that's the Kel that God is calling Jacob. What does it mean to be called God? Obviously, Jacob is not God. But what does it mean that God calls him Kel? It means that he imbues Jacob with a power which is a godly power. We do speak in the Torah of godly souls. Like the Arizal. What are the initials of Ari? What does it spell? It's not from the Bible. Much later, just 500 years ago. The Arizal stands for Ha-Eloki Rabbeinu Yitzchak, the divine soul, the divine person, our master Yitzchak. That was his proper name. So we do speak of divine souls. Every Jew has a divine soul. But that the soul should be revealed, totally revealed, and that we experience divinity in a great, great tzaddik, that's something which is unique. So when God calls Jacob Kel, what he is actually saying is that by connecting to Jacob, to this tzaddik, which is an all-inclusive soul, neshama klalit, one is able to experience through him divinity. So not that he is actually God, but that one can experience divinity, like see godliness through the soul of Jacob. Actually, it says that the soul of Jacob is the most all-inclusive soul of all of the souls, and that his picture, so to speak, is engraved on the throne of glory of God. as the ultimate, all-inclusive soul of souls. So once more, this property that Jacob reflects divinity, that's his crown. So once more, in a certain sense, Jacob, that soul, reflects to whoever envisions him and comes close to him. As we said before, delves deeply into himself and meets Jacob, he experiences divinity. What is the next property? The most essential thing that God does that we know of is that he creates the world. And he continuously creates the world every second. Mechadesh betuvo, he renews creation every split second. There's a verse, once more, the verse that says that God called Jacob God, that's in the Torah. But there's a verse in Isaiah that says, that refers to Jacob as the power of creation. Also, God speaks, V'ata ko amar Hashem, and now so says God, Bora'acha Yaakov v'yotzercha Yisrael. Your creator is Jacob, and your former is Israel. Israel is another name, the second name, actually the higher name of Jacob. How do the sages interpret that verse in Isaiah? That Bora'acha Yaakov, your creator is Jacob and your former is Israel. They say that God is as though addressing the world that he created, and he's saying, Olami, Olami, my world, my world. Who created you? Jacob. Who formed you? Israel. What does that mean? Once more, a very, very enigmatic verse, phrase. To create in Hebrew means also to heal. Bara is bari, to be healthy and sound, strong and sound, is bari. The Arizal himself says that there is the initial creation ex nihilo, but then at the beginning of creation, there was a catastrophe that took place in accordance with the will and the plan of God, which is called the Shirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, in a primordial world which is referred to as the world of chaos. And the world that we live in, which is called the world whose soul is Jacob, that we just mentioned in the beginning, is the world of tikkun, of rectification. And the Baal, the master of the world of rectification, is everything that we're attempting to accomplish in our life, in the history of mankind, is the work of Jacob to recreate, which means to heal the illness of the breaking of the vessels. So once more, we're taught that the fact that Jacob creates the world means that he heals the world. He brings the world to a state of rectification, of tikkun. Where does that come from? From what power in the soul does that come from? It comes from the power of wisdom. Because the verse says, we read in Psalms, Ma rabu ma'asech Hashem, how many and great are your deeds, your workings, God. Kulam b'chokhmah asita, all of them are done and created and rectified through the means of the power of wisdom. Why is the power of wisdom the secret of rectification and the power of rectification? Because true wisdom is to experience selflessness. As we said before, what is Esau, the twin brother, the evil twin brother of Jacob, what does he represent in the soul? He represents egocentricity, arrogance. It's called yeshut, selfishness. That's the opposite of wisdom. True wisdom is selflessness. And through selflessness, not selfishness, one rectifies and one heals broken reality. So once more, the power to heal and to rectify, which is to recreate anew in a good way, is the power of Jacob. That's his wisdom, his power of wisdom. The next sphira is the power of understanding. Understanding in Kabbalah and the Zohar and throughout Kabbalah and Chassidut is often referred to as the world to come, or an alternate phrase for the world to come is the Garden of Eden, Gan Eden. And it says in the Zohar that Yaakov, Jacob himself, is the secret of the Garden of Eden, more than any other soul in the Bible. Just this last Shabbat, yesterday, in the Torah, we read about Jacob coming and receiving the blessings from his father, Yitzchak, Isaac. And Isaac thought that it was Esau. But one of the reasons that he was suspicious that perhaps because of the way that he talked, that perhaps this is not Esau, maybe it's a Jacob. But one of the things that gave him inspiration and desire and love to bless this child of his who is now standing before him is that when Jacob entered the room, he experienced an experience of the Garden of Eden, as though the Garden of Eden came, and the odor, the smell that he smelled was Reach Gan Eden, that's the phrase. The odor, the fragrance of the Garden of Eden. Meaning that Jacob himself is the Garden of Eden, and he gives off a fragrance which is the fragrance of the Garden of Eden. How much does that phrase equal in Gematria? It's a very beautiful, important phrase of the sages. The fragrance of the Garden of Eden, Reach Gan Eden, equals 395, which is the same as Neshama, soul. In Kabbalah, the word Neshama, if it's made to correspond to one of the Sfirot, one of the divine channels and lights, corresponds to Bina, to Ima, to the world to come. Not only does it equal this number, 395, Neshama, it also equals exactly Rabbi Akiva. He said before that the primary reincarnation of Jacob is Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva himself he came biologically, Rabbi Akiva is a descendant of Esau. Because he comes from Gerim, once more, he comes from non-Jewish souls that once more, in order to convert, as we said before, delve deeply into their reality and meet Jacob and identify with Jacob. And that's Rabbi Akiva. And he himself is equal to this phrase, the fragrance of the Garden of Eden. Right, so now we did the first three, the higher three of the Sfirot, of the divine channels of creation and the divine attributes of the soul. Very often there's an 11th, which is actually the fourth, because the reflection of the superconscious crown in the consciousness itself is called da'at. Da'at is knowledge, or the power of connection, the power of concentration in the soul. Yaakov, Jacob, is very unique in relation to Da'at, because it says that his Da'at is actually his own soul. In general, he is Tiferet, he is beauty. We're going to reach that. The Sfirot are organized in accordance with the pattern or the diagram, which is referred to as the Tree of Life diagram, that has 3 axes to it: right, left, and middle. And Yaakov, what's special about Yaakov is he is the middle axis. The middle's like synthesis, like in philosophy you would speak of thesis and antithesis, and synthesis. The power of synthesis is the middle axis of the Sfirot. It begins with Keter, and then it reflects. Keter reflects in Da'at. Keter, the crown, reflects in knowledge. Knowing is also like marital relation, is referred to as knowing in the Torah. Unification, the power of unification, to unify with another soul. Then the next point of Sfirah in the middle axis, the middle line, is beauty, which is the normal attribute that corresponds to Jacob. Then comes foundation, which corresponds to his son Joseph. And finally comes Malchut, kingdom, which corresponds to King David. That's the middle axis. Now, the soul of Tiferet, of beauty, is Da'at. So actually, Da'at is Jacob's own soul. Jacob is the soul of reality. Now we understand another thing about soul. Soul is the middle point. The middle point of the middle axis. The middle of the middle. But that soul itself has a soul. What is the soul of the soul? So in souls in the Torah, the soul of Jacob is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu gives us the Torah, which is referred to as the Tree of Life. Moshe Rabbeinu is the all-inclusive Da'at, ability to know God. That's what the Torah is. It's the power, the ability of the soul to know, which means to connect, to unify with the Creator. That's the Torah. The very first word of the Torah is Breshit, in the beginning. And it doesn't say in the beginning of what? It's in the construct, grammatically it's in the construct form, and it should be in the beginning of something, in the beginning of the world, in the beginning of creation, the beginning of all. God created the heavens and the earth. But it doesn't say in the beginning, it's just in the beginning. In English it makes sense. But in Hebrew, it's problematic, the word Breshit. Because grammatically, there should be another word that says in the beginning of what? Chazal interpret, the sages interpret, and Rashi quotes this in his very first interpretation of the Torah, that in the beginning can be read as for the sake of something that we already know, something which is referred to in the Bible as the beginning. And he brings 2 things that are referred to in the Bible as the beginning, which one is the Torah, that is referred to as Reshit Darko, the beginning of the way of God. And the other is Israel, which is referred to as the beginning of the produce of God, Reshit Vuato. So Rashi says that the very first word of the Torah, of the Bible, can be understood to say, to teach us for what purpose and what reason the world was created, for the purpose of the Torah, and for the purpose of Israel. Now Israel is the whole people of Israel, but in particular Israel is the soul that we're now discussing and contemplating, the soul of Jacob. How do those two go together? Just as we said before. The Torah, which is Zichru Torat Moshe Avdi, remember and know and connect to the Torah of Moses, my servant, is the inner soul of Jacob himself. So the Torah is the soul of Israel, and the Israel is the soul of the world. Just before Jacob passed away, it says, Vayitchazek Yisrael, that Israel became strong. He was on his deathbed. As we'll see in the continuation, we're taught that Jacob doesn't die. Nonetheless, according to the simple reading, he's on his deathbed. And it says, Vayitchazek, that he became strong. And he sat on the bed. How does the Arizal interpret that? That he became strong. He elevated himself, his soul, to his own soul root. Whereas he is the all-inclusive soul of all of the souls. But he himself has a soul root. And that soul root is Moses. And Moses equals, also a gematria that the Arizal teaches us, equals chazak, 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 strong, strong, strong. So when it says that he became strong, it means that he lifted himself, he elevated himself to his own root, which is Moses, which in the Sfirot, in the divine channels, it means that he accomplished the elevation of Tiferet of beauty to Da'at. From beauty to knowledge. That's what knowledge is: connection, unification, conscious unification with God. So that's the da'at, the special da'at of Yaakov Avinu. The next one is chesed. Chesed is loving kindness. Once more, loving kindness in general is an attribute of Abraham, but Jacob also has something unique about loving kindness that even Abraham doesn't have. The three patriarchs, one of the things we're taught in the Zohar about the three patriarchs is that they rectified, all three of them were involved and devoted themselves throughout their lifetime to rectify the primordial sin of Adam. Now we know that the primordial sin of Adam is simply eating from the forbidden fruit. But the sages, in understanding in depth what that sin really means, find three elements within that primordial sin which correspond to the three most severe offenses and crimes and transgressions in the Torah, which are idolatry and murder and adultery. Meaning that there was an element in the primordial sin of Adam, an element of idolatry, means that he didn't believe in the Creator, and he worshipped idols whilst he ate from the forbidden fruit. And there was an element of murder. The first murderer was his son, Cain, that killed his brother, Abel. But there was already an element of murder in the primordial sin. And there was also an element of adultery, of sexual perversion in the primordial sin. So because the primordial sin had three elements of the three most severe offenses in the Torah, the three offenses that one is instructed to give up his life and not to transgress. Better to die and not transgress one of these three. Only three. These are the only three. That it's better to die and not transgress. So the three patriarchs had to come to correct and rectify those three offenses, those three elements that existed in the primordial sin. Now it's very clear which patriarch corrected which. It's Well, this comes from the Zohar, and explained in depth in the writings of the Arizal, that Abraham, he was the first to break the idols of his own father, Terach. And his whole life was devoted to teaching monotheism and to negating idolatry. So it's very, very clear that Abraham came to rectify the element of idolatry in the primordial sin of Adam. Isaac, Yitzchak loved his son Esau, who was a archetypal murderer in the Torah. What does that mean? It means that his purpose was to rectify murder. The person who is responsible that there should not be murder in a society is the king of the society. That's why we're taught that kingdom comes from Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gevurah, is might. But that's the origin of kingdom, because the this is the Rambam, Maimonides explains in Halacha, that the primary function of the king is to make sure that there is no murder in his kingdom, in society. So once more, Isaac, it says, he rectifies the element of murder in the primordial sin of Adam. So now we come to Jacob, our choice father of the patriarchs. He rectifies adultery, sexual perversion. He is the only one, as we'll explain in the continuation, whose bed is complete. The fact that all of his children are tzaddikim, are righteous, and that they create the Jewish people. That from Jacob on there is a people. From Isaac and Abraham there's not yet a people. But the Jewish people is from Jacob. That's the simple pshat, the simple literal meaning that he is the choice of the fathers. That also has to do with the fact that he rectified the element of adultery in the primordial sin of Adam. But now that we contemplate this, the commentators say that there's a little problem here. What's the problem? The problem is that the relationship between these three greatest offenses, if we see them as corresponding also to the three axes of the tree of life. So murder is obviously to the left. So that fits well with the soul root of Isaac. But the relation between adultery and idolatry, that idolatry is the pigam, the blemish of da'at, of the middle. Whereas adultery is the blemish of love, which is the right. So I would expect that the one to rectify adultery would be Abraham, who was the right, and the one to rectify idolatry would be Jacob, who was in the middle, but it's the reverse. As we said before, it's obvious that Abraham is the one that rectifies idolatry and not adultery. And it's also quite clear that Jacob is the one that rectifies adultery and not idolatry. So this is an example of what's called in Kabbalah achlif u'duchtay, that sometimes things interchange. That here, in this particular context, Jacob is to the right, and Abraham is to the middle. As now we're discussing, we're contemplating a whole, called Partzuf, a whole persona of all of the 10 sfirot, of the 11 sfirot, in Jacob himself. This is his rectification of love. how do I also see that Jacob has some very special love that the two previous patriarchs do not yet have so much as he has? Also love for his wife. Jacob is the one soul, the primary soul in the whole Bible, that falls in love at first sight with Rachel. And the love is tremendous. It gives him the motivation, the power to work 7 years and another 7 years. The hardest labor conceivable. Abraham is the pillar of love, but it doesn't say in the Bible explicitly that he loved his wife. It's obvious, but it doesn't say so. When Yitzchak, Isaac, married his wife Rivka, it says that he loved her. But Jacob, it says over and over again, several times, how great was his love for Rachel. So this is also something unique about Jacob, which is unique about his power of love. And his power of love is itself his ability, his power of holy, of sacred love, is his ability to rectify the element of adultery in the primordial sin of Adam. So that's all the chesed, the love, the very unique love of Jacob. The next is Gvurah. Gvurah must come from his father. It's something in him, but it comes from the level of his father, Isaac, who is might. Gvurah is might. But it also means fear or awe. When we pray to Hashem 3 times every day, in the very first blessing of the Shmona Esrei, of the standing devotion, we begin with mentioning the 3 fathers, that God, we're praying to God, that you, God, are the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And immediately after saying that we're praying to the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, we say that God is great and mighty and awesome. So it's very clear, and this we're taught throughout Kabbalah, that the greatness, that God is great, Hagadol, corresponds to the God of Abraham, and that he is mighty, Hagibor, corresponds to the God of Isaac, but that he is awesome, Vahanorah, that corresponds to the God of Jacob. So this is a little, an innovation that we see here, because awesome comes from the word yirah, fear. And I would normally identify fear with Isaac, not with Jacob. From what verse, from what story do we learn that Jacob is related or is conscious of God's awesomeness? We learn it from the Torah reading of today, which is the first portion of Parashat Vayetze. It was mentioned before that we have the first dream of the ladder standing on the earth, on the ground, and reaching up into the heavens, with the angels going up and down. And then God appears to Jacob and says to him, Ufarasa, you will spread and extend to all of the 4 extremities of the earth. When Jacob woke up, it says that he experienced fear, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is the gate to heaven. This is the place that God's home will be built. That's today's Torah reading. The Baal Shem Tov takes this verse and understands that here is the greatest, deepest, and all-inclusive teachings in our service of Hashem. And he gives it a name to this teaching, and the teaching is called Yichud Yir'ah Nora, the unification of fear and awesomeness. Because the verse reads that he was afraid, and he said, how awesome is this place. And because of that word, how awesome is this place, that's why 3 times every day, at least 3 times every day, we refer to God as awesome in correspondence to the God of Jacob. Because he, once more, to create the unification is actually God. That's his own soul. But the unification that he experiences is between fear, his own fear, which he gets from his father, but his special, unique experience of awesomeness, of Norah. Just to explain simply as we can, there's a very, very profound teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, this Yichud Yir'ah Norah. But the simple explanation is that he was able to unify this subjective experience of fear with the objective presence of God's awesomeness in reality. It's more. Jacob has to do with unification. And one of the deepest states of unification is to be able to unify the subject with the object. Awesomeness is God is awesome. That's an objective state. Fear is I'm afraid. That's a subjective experience. The fear, my subjective experience, unifying with the objective awesomeness of God, that's what the Baal Shem Tov calls Yichud, Yir'ah. And it says that if a person, every person, that we're all children of Jacob, if we're able to affect this unification of fear with awesomeness, that is the way that we elevate all of the sparks, of the fallen sparks of reality, through this unification. One might think that to unify the subject and the object is maybe through love or through some other of the attributes of the emotions of the heart. But no, the essential unification of the subject and the object is the unification of the middle, which is taking from his father the left, taking his fear and unifying it with the absolute awesomeness of the infinite one, blessed be. Awesomeness is an experience of infinity. All right, nonetheless, since this is all based on fear, this is the fear, the epitome of fear of the left, of Gvurah, of Jacob himself. In 2 weeks, we're going to read a Torah portion which begins, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv, that Jacob dwelled in the land of the place that his father lived in. The word his father lived in, megurei, is a synonym in Hebrew for fear. And the way it's explained in Chassidut is that Jacob experienced fear, but he's able to dwell, to settle well in a state of fear. In general, it says that fear makes a person flee, go back, fall back from fear. But Jacob was content in his father's fear. There's something unique about him. Now let's try to continue. The next firah, the next one is Tiferet, beauty itself, which is the essential, usually identified with Jacob himself. One saying that we're taught in Kabbalah and Chassidut is that Jacob, more than the two patriarchs that preceded him, Abraham and Isaac, is just like Adam. Before we said that all 3 rectified the initial primordial sin of Adam. But the one that is most like Adam, before his own sin, is Jacob. And the expression is, Shufrei Yaakov me'en Shufrei Adam HaRishon. The beauty of Jacob is the most beautiful in soul and in body as well. The beauty of Jacob is just like the beauty of primordial man. What's more, beauty is compassion. And as we now said before, in the name of the first Rebbe of Chabad, beauty is also the faith, or once more, the conviction, which actually makes it become revealed, that all is for the good. So that beauty of Jacob derives from the beauty of primordial man, of Adam. The next Sfirah is Netzach. Netzach means victory. It also means eternity, like eternal life. Jacob wrestles with the archangel of his twin brother, his evil twin brother, Esau. He is victorious over him. In the wrestling bout with him. After being victorious over the angel of Esau, the angel subdues himself to Jacob, and he gives him a new name, an additional name, Israel. And what does Israel mean? Israel means that you have shown yourself powerful to overcome man and even spiritual beings, angels. You have been victorious, and this is the meaning, the literal meaning of the name Israel, that you have been victorious over man and angels. So that's why this name, even though it has many, many deep meanings, Israel, but the simple literal meaning of Israel has to do with the Sfirah of Netzach, special name that is given to Jacob, because he has been victorious over man and over angels. There's a phrase, Netzach Yisrael. Actually, B'Hashgacha Pratit, we're sitting right there. That Netzach Yisrael is called the victory of Israel. That's more a phrase that Shmuel says, Samuel says. So Netzach Yisrael is the most important, maybe, idiom that unites a Sfirah with Israel. Netzach Yisrael, the eternity of Israel. Also, Jacob, it says, he lives on eternally. Something that is not said about the previous two patriarchs. Yaakov lo met, which also is a unique property of Netzach. The next property that Jacob has, a unique property, is Hod, thanksgiving, whose inner experience is sincerity, tamimut. Just as Moses is given in the Torah one attribute, his primary attribute, which is humility, that the man Moses was more humble than all men on earth, so Jacob, his outer manifestation, once more, Jacob is the outer manifestation of Moses, who himself is the inner soul of all of reality. He is also just given one attribute when he was young, a young boy. He's Ish Tam, Yaakov Ish Tam. He's a sincere, simple man. That unique thing about Jacob is that he's a sincere, simple Jew. That's his Hod. The word Hod is the root of the word Jew, Yehudi, which is because of the sincerity and the simpleness of walking purely and sincerely with God. And studying Torah, there it's in the context of his Torah learning. He was sincere. And he did it when you're sincere, you do it with all of your heart. The next Firah is Yesod. Yesod is foundation. That's the power of procreation. Corresponds to the Brit, the old Brit Kodesh. Of that we said before that he is the only father whose bed is complete. That's the idiom. Mitato shlema, that all of his children are holy. Va'amech kulam tzadikim, they're all tzadikim. He perfected his power of procreation. This also has to do with his love, that he was the one that rectified the element of adultery in the primordial sin. But love is chesed. The power of procreation is Firah Yesod. The last is actually, could very well have been the first to explain, because it has to do with the pshat, with the simple literal meaning of his name, Jacob. The name that was given after he won the wrestling bout with the angel of Esau is Israel, which from used to spell Li Rosh, I have a head. I'm on the head, I'm on the top. I've won the battle. What about his initial name, which remains even after he was given the name Israel? The initial name remains, Yaakov. What does that mean? Yaakov comes from the word heel, the very opposite of the head. Israel comes from head. And Yaakov is the heel. Why is he called heel? He's called heel because when he was born, just as in often is the case, the experience or what you envision, what you see when a baby is born, that's the name, that inspiration of what you see, what the parents see, is the inspiration for the name that he's given. How was he born? The Torah says that he was born holding on to the heel of his twin brother, Esau. What does that imply? Why was he taking hold of the heel? So one interpretation that Chazal say is that because he was from the first drop of semen, and he said, I should have been born first. I should be the firstborn, the Bechor. So he's trying to prevent Esau from exiting the womb first, and thereby he becoming the firstborn. But a deeper interpretation is that Esau represents Malchut, the kingdom, the rule of this world. Malchut is the kingdom of this world. The governing power of society. And Jacob says, I want to govern. It's called the kingdom of Israel. But I know that this was already decided while the two twins were in the womb, that my brother, who for the time being is a wicked brother, he's going to be the first one to rule. But I'm taking hold of his heel, means that the first possible opportunity and moment to take over his malchut, I'm going to take advantage of that. And it's that the fact that he took hold of his brother's heel was a sign of what in the future will be, that at the end, the heel's the end, at the end of the malchut harasha'ah, of the evil kingdom of Esau, Jacob, which is the good, holy kingdom of Israel, will take over. Will actually usurp the evil kingdom and reign. So the Akev, the heel, the Akev, represents the end of evil, government and the beginning of good, holy government, which is the coming of Mashiach. That's the Malchut. So what we didn't get to this evening is some more of the reincarnations of Jacob. We'll leave that. If anyone wants to ask questions about that, we'll be happy to answer the questions. We'll just say that after Rabbi Akiva, the next reincarnation is Rabbeinu HaKadosh, whose best friend was the emperor, the Caesar of Rome, who was the reincarnation of Esau. And that Caesar of Rome converted in secrecy. He converted to Judaism, Antoninus. And that represents the ultimate, as we said in the beginning, the ultimate rectification, which has to do with the heel of Jacob, that at the end, he's going to influence his evil twin brother to reunite and to convert. He's the emperor of Rome, to convert to Judaism. With this, we'll complete, and now we can take questions.